force in all of us that science knows nothing about. It's fear.
Welcome everyone to Induced Fear. I'm your host Oscar, and with me I have Jason Stroming of Odd Untold. How's it going, man?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Oscar. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. It's always like I said before the recording. It's always nice talking to somebody who is in the same game, basically.
But yeah, definitely. We feel each other's pain.
Oh yeah, mine is always the editing. That's the most pain when it comes to any of this. But what was?
Really, yeah, see, I enjoy the editing part. I don't like the recording part so much.
That's the easy part for me.
I don't know why.
I think I
really?
guess with mine it's more I sit listen, more than me telling things.
Yeah. No, I get it.
So I guess with yours, you're more when it was sharing the research and things like that.
Yeah, I kind of bounce between doing my, sharing stories and having guests on. It depends on if I can schedule a guest. And if I can't, I kind of do a solo show. The past year has been kind of weird for me schedule-wise, so it's been tough to schedule guests unless I know the person, because I hate canceling on people. Like, especially if I don't know them, like a new person, you hate being like, hey, I got to cancel at the last minute, because it just comes off as not cool, even if I have legit reasons. So it's easier for me to cancel on people I've already had on before, or friends, or things like that. But yeah, so I try to do a mix.
Sweet, yeah. I completely get the whole scheduling thing. I mean, at the time right now, I am looking for a place to move and then also scheduling people. So my mind is very all over the place. But
oh yeah, I get it.
As we go into your show, what was the origin story of you starting the show?
So it goes back a long time. I've been a paranormal investigator for like over 20 years. Been into the paranormal since I was a kid. Started a group with this other guy back in like 2006, and we did a lot of paranormal investigating. And prior to that, actually, I'll jump back there. Prior to actually being in the group, I ran a paranormal blog called the unexplained.net, and because I couldn't get .com. And I would write columns, and other people. I had a lot of guest people on who would write stuff for me as well, and it went really well. And I used to do a book review column like once a month or so, and I would review like paranormal books called the Occult Section. And then I kind of joined this paranormal group, and I got rid of the Unexplained because other people, the people who were writing for me kind of, who had kids or who went off to write a book, or, so that sort of dissolved. And then we were in this paranormal group, and that lasted a few years. And once that dissolved, I formed another paranormal group, but I enjoyed the writing, so I said, I'm going to start a blog, and it was called The Occult Section. And I ran that for many, many years. That started maybe in 2010, and I ran that for about 12 years, so that ended in 2022. I didn't want to, but the landscape sort of changed. Like you kind of said off air, like, COVID kind of hit, and everybody jumped into the podcasting game.
Yeah.
And it's, now it's all about TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and nobody likes to read anymore. And I loved writing. And my site sort of got hit by the Google algorithm, and I went from like 25,000 hits a month down to like 800. So, wow. And then I got hacked, and then, like, there was like so much stuff going on with the blog, and it was a very sort of tongue-in-cheek blog. I would kind of I did book reviews, I did movie reviews. I had, again, other people helping me, who wrote for me. And but a lot of time it was really just looking at news items and analyzing them sort of from a more skeptical point of view, because I believe, but I'm also, I try to approach things from a pragmatic, right, and we would just see these stories online that were, oh, here's a photo of a ghost, and it was clearly not. It was like, but people were trying to do, news organizations do this for clickbait, and or Bigfoot was spotted and it's easily debunked. So I would do a lot of that. I would do a lot of sort of debunking or analysis. And like I said, once the site got hacked, once Google algorithms kind of pushed my site down, my wife at the time sort of said, you got to change with the times. You can't keep doing this if it's not getting you where you want to be. And I did a deep dive, and like even just like the name of the site, the occult section, I found I was being blocked at like people's places of work, colleges and schools, like because of the word occult. I guess
Yeah.
the work filters and the school filters would filter that out. So anybody who says, "Oh, I want to click on this link," it would just get blocked. And I started asking people I knew, "Can you check this at work?" And they were like, "Yeah, I can't get into your site." So I was like, all right, I need a name change. I need a format change. So Odd Untold was born, and I started that in June of 2022, and have been doing it ever since. So that's my long-winded explanation and answer to your question.
No, but that's awesome. I like the idea of reading things. I mean, that's how a lot of us got into this world. Basically, is we hear about these stories, and then it was reading all of these different like articles, whether it be an article on a website or it be in a book or anything like that. It was cool to go to these websites and see this collection of stories. I mean, that's something that I really liked when I was younger, was just going to a website, even if they had just a bunch of random pictures of just, like you said, like it was a ghost that obviously wasn't a ghost. As a kid, you're just clicking away and reading like the story of it, and on to the next and on to the next and on to the next, and that fueled you. But yeah, now it's just very short form content heavy, and you have to be really quick with it, and it has to be fast because people's attention spans now are very little, very short.
Yeah, and it's a shame because sometimes you want to do like deep dives into something and analyze it and talk about it. And yeah, people just want like, give me a 30-second quick clip so I can move on to the next 30-second clip. And yeah, so I think my audience tends to skew a little older just because I do more long form videos, kind of like you. My videos like on the short side are like a little over a half hour. And then on the long side, they can go easily like an hour and 15. So yeah, I don't think I'm catching the kiddies with my my videos because they're just too long. They want the TikToks and the Instagram stories and the YouTube shorts, and I don't do that too much.
Yeah, I know. My fiance had suggested to me, she was like, just cut an entire episode into either 30-second or 1-minute clips and then just post it every day, like the whole entire episode every day. And I was like, first off, this sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Second of all, like, I don't know if anybody will like catch it. It would be like part 27 of this hour-long episode. But I mean,
my philosophy is always like I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go on.
All right. Like my philosophy approaching it was like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And the audience who is supposed to be my audience, they'll find me. And I'm not looking to have 1 million subscribers by the end of the month or, like I do what I do. I enjoy it. I have my super fans. I have my regular fans. I have, and it's great. And I don't want it, like you said, I don't want to have to chop my video up into 27 different parts. And, I want the people who are going to put it on and like relax in the evening after a long day of work and listen for a half hour or an hour and are not going to like watch a 30-second video and then go on to someone else's content. I want, to provide higher quality content, as I'm sure you do, you do longer videos, and that's great. You get in depth with people, and that's awesome.
Yeah. I find that commendable in itself, that you're just like, listen, I'm going to get with the times in the sense of I'm going to do this show, I'm going to record it, and I'm going to put it out where people usually watch videos or listen to podcasts, but I'm not going to completely make it not fun anymore for myself. Like you want it, you love it because you love what you do and you love the content you put out. I think having to break it all up and try really hard to like reel in people who really don't, you're only going to catch them you're only going to bring them in because of its short form content. I think it's awesome that you're just like, you know what? I'm going to bring in the people that I'm going to bring in. The people who like this content are going to come in anyways.
Yeah, you have to be authentic to yourself because I think you're just working that much harder to attract people who ultimately probably won't like what you're doing anyway.
Yeah.
You can serve them up these little niblets of short-term content or short-form content. And yeah, you might get some views, but are you really getting fans? Are you really bringing the repeat audience? And that's what I want. I just want, and I'd rather have 100 fans who love what I do than 1,000 fans who just scroll on by. And, and I'm getting the watches, but is it really, am I getting the interaction? Am I getting anything out of it?
Yeah, no, I completely get that. Now, what was the initial thing that kind of pulled you into the, because you said as a kid you loved the paranormal. What was that initial thing that kind of pulled you in?
That goes back to my dad, and my father just inspired so much of who I am. Like, I play guitar because of him. I'm into the paranormal because of him. I just remember like being a real little kid, 3 or 4 years old, and I'd wake up, late on a Saturday night and couldn't sleep, and he'd be out in the living room watching a horror movie, and he's like, "Yeah, come watch TV with me." And we'd watch these horror movies, and probably wasn't the best thing for my psyche because some of them were real scary at the time. But he'd also watch shows like In Search Of, those old docudramas, speculation, Overlords of the UFO, or The Mysterious Monsters, and like real cheesy like 70s documentaries that they would play late at night. And just like seeing the Patterson-Gimlin footage or ghost photos, or they'd talk about the Roswell crash, the UFO crash, and like that just really fascinated me. And my mom would take me to the library every 2 weeks, and I'd go and check out books on all of these things, Encyclopedia of Monsters, or, books on the unexplained. I digested so many like UFO books and Bigfoot books, and that's all I would read. I was just always reading nonfiction, well, depends on your point of view if you believe in these things. But it was, I was never reading like novels. I was always reading these compendiums of unexplained phenomena, from UFOs and Bigfoot, paranormal stuff, to just unexplained mysteries, spontaneous combustion, and things like that. And so I just grew up watching these things and just being fascinated by them. And then, as I got older, I started having some experiences, and that just drove my curiosity. Is like, what are these things? What am I seeing? What are other people seeing? And that's really what drove me.
Yeah, I know. I completely. That's how it was for me as well. It went from really being into this thing, especially because like my godfather was the one who would tell the ghost stories. We'd drive past every places, and he would be like, "This place is haunted. Here's the story." And that's what really got me into it. And then it wasn't until my own experiences that I really started to. It made you feel like, okay, all right. Now the stories that I've been reading, I now know like something is going on. Like, I know for myself something is going on. So it's awesome. I mean, it's scary probably at the time. I don't know. I mean, we can get into your experience. I don't know if yours was scary or not for you.
Some of them were, scary or just startling, unsettling, maybe is the better word. I had some experiences as a kid where I would see things, and I tend to throw those out because I was so young, and I remember them, and I'm like, but was I just so young where, my young little brain was seeing things? The first real thing that happened to me was I was 16, and it was like one of the first weekends my parents had left me home alone, and they went down to their friend's house overnight, and I was by myself. My buddy John was over, actually. It was a Saturday night. We're hanging out, and he went home late. It was probably like 1:30 in the morning. His father came and picked him up, and he went home. I said, all right, I'm going to go to bed now. So I go in my room. I close the door. I'm pulling the blankets back. There's a knock on my door. And just instinctive, like I didn't even think about it at first. I just turned to go open it, not remembering no one's there, and I open it and there's nobody there. And I grabbed my pillow and a blanket, and I went out into the living room, and I slept there, and I never slept in my bedroom again when they were gone, because it was just this wasn't like a very subtle noise, or maybe it was something downstairs or next door. This was like a knuckle rap on my door of wood, and that was like the first real, true, unexplainable thing that happened to me that freaked me out.
Yeah, especially with it coming from inside the house. It's not like it was outside at the front door, but being at your bedroom door, you heard the knock.
Oh, yeah. It was just clear as day. And it was like one of those like those thin panel doors, and it would rattle, and I remember there were lots of times, like if the windows were open, it would move slightly. It was just a light door. And just anytime my parents needed me, it was like the 3 knocks. It was just like the 3 knuckle knocks on the door. And that's what this was. And I went to open it again, like just, I'm tired. I'm just, I lived in a small apartment with my parents and two younger brothers. So there's just certain things that are, the door gets knocked on, you open it because it's somebody, and here it was 1:30 in the morning or whatever it was. And I was home alone, and there's a knock at the door. So I don't know what that was, but I did not sleep in my room that night.
Yeah, well, like you said, just completely unsettling in that moment because you didn't like call your parents to like come home now, but you were like, I'm just not going to be in the room.
Yeah, I was 16 and I knew they weren't going to come home. And again, you got to remember, this is, 35 years ago, no cell phones.
Yeah.
So I would have had to have called my parents' friends and like, I would have woken everybody up and like, why? Because I thought I heard a knock at my door. Yes, I just went and slept on the couch. I was like, all right, there's no doors to the living room, so no one can knock on this door.
Did you ever share that with your parents? Like when they got back, did you say like, hey, I heard a knock on my door?
Not when they got back. No, I shared it with them years later, probably as an adult. And, they were just like, well, we never experienced anything in that apartment. And I was like, well, yeah, you were always home with 3 young kids and it's a small apartment. And, by the time things even got quiet at night, you're probably just too tired because they worked and, both my brothers are younger than I was. So they were just never like, my dad was like never in the apartment by himself. Okay. My mother was never in the apartment by herself. It was just, or if she was, it was in the middle of the day and she was probably doing chores and had music on. And so it's one of those things where if you don't have that complete silence, you're not going to hear these things necessarily. So yeah, and in future years, I had many things kind of happen in that apartment, and I did a whole series of podcast episodes on it. And I had my friend John, who also had things happen in that apartment as we were growing up in later years. And yeah, it was just one of those, like, I don't want to call it haunted because I don't know, but if I was ever going to call a place haunted, that place was haunted. And the skeptics will say, well, you're into the paranormal, so everything you hear, that's a ghost. And nowhere else I've ever lived has had any activity. It was like that place was active, and everywhere I've lived since then, nothing really happened ever.
Did it feel like it was it was only happening to you within that place? Because you said your parents didn't experience anything either. I don't know if your brothers did.
Not while we were all living there. So
okay.
The funny thing is it was a 2-family house. So we lived upstairs. My grandparents lived downstairs. And when my parents moved out, my 2 brothers moved with them and my girlfriend at the time moved in. And that's kind of when things started happening. And my brother, he would stay over in the guest room because one of the front rooms in the upstairs apartment was turned into a guest room. And my brother would come from Staten Island sometimes, and instead of taking the bus back late at night, he would, especially on weekends, he would spend the night. And suddenly he stopped doing that. And I remember asking him at the time, like, why don't you stay over anymore? And he's like, weird stuff happens in that room. Like the TV goes on and off by itself and we hear things. And then we'd have other people stay in that guest room. And all these people who didn't know the other people or didn't know the stories, they would all start telling us the same thing. Like, hey, like that room is creepy. I felt like I was being watched all night. I felt like there was someone else in there with me. I heard things out in the hall. Or why were you out in the hall last night? I heard you walking around. And I was like, I wasn't in the hall. Like, I was asleep. So it started like validating some of my experiences to know that other people were then experiencing these same things. People who didn't know each other or didn't know of the stories necessarily were then coming to us and being like, that room is weird. Or like I said, even some people just like, why were you walking around last night? It's like, I wasn't. And then they were like, oh. And then I tell them like, yeah, we kind of have activity here.
Yeah, that's. It's always awesome when you have the things happen to other people to just corroborate your experiences that you're going on, because you're like, okay, good. I mean, everybody's thing is like, all right, good, I'm not crazy. Because
right.
But it's pretty. Then
well, yeah, because you do hear things and see things, and then when someone else is seeing and hearing those same things at a different time, and you've never told them about it, yeah, it definitely validates. Like, all right, something's going on here.
And was it just your classic haunting style things, like you're starting with the knock on the door? Was it mainly just the sound of footsteps going by and tappings on the wall or anything like that?
Yeah, it was very subtle type stuff. And a lot of people, because like I said, I was a paranormal investigator, and people who don't do this or haven't had experiences, they think it's like in the movies, and they think it's like Poltergeist, where you open the door and all the toys in the room are floating and there's a portal to another dimension in the closet. And I'm like, no, like in all my experiences, it's been much more subtle. And yeah, in that apartment, it was always, you'd hear muffled voices sometimes coming from the next room. And you knew what it sounded like because people used to live there. And you say, okay, that's clearly in the next room. Or you'd hear like my wife, my ex-wife, who was my wife at the time, she would always say too, like, every time I get up and go to the bathroom at night, it sounds like someone's following me. Like there's footsteps behind her. So yeah, muffled voices, footsteps, and nothing crazy, but it was always just very subtle, very quick. It was there and then it was gone.
Yeah. No oozing walls and things like that.
No, like I said, it was just very.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd go down in the basement to do laundry and nobody would be home. My grandparents were out, my wife was out, and I'd hear somebody walking upstairs in my grandparents' house, and I'd run upstairs because maybe they got home and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
And it was funny because one time we were doing a ghost hunt there, my paranormal group, and everybody was out. I wasn't living upstairs anymore. My grandparents went to Atlantic City, and we were setting up like the cameras in the basement. And the guy I was, in the group with, he like turns to me and he's like, I thought you said we were here alone. Like, do you hear that upstairs? And I'm like, yeah, that's just what happens. Like, you hear footsteps. And it was clearly above us. Like, this was not like next door making noise. And just clearly, like, I see him like looking up, like following the footsteps. And I was like, yeah, I told you this place has got something going on.
Yeah, this is why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to ask.
And of course, it was before we had any of the cameras set up. But
yeah, that's usually how it goes. I was just gonna ask too if you ever like did an investigation there, because I always think about that for like past places that I lived that felt haunted. So I think that's cool that you were able to actually do an investigation where you had tons of experiences happen for you.
Yeah, and like I said, it was rare to get the building to ourselves, like because my grandparents were older, they were retired, and we had to like wait for them to go away. And they were away for the weekend. So we said, this is a perfect time to do it. So we went in and didn't really catch anything because, like I said, the one thing that did happen was like before the other two members even got there, we were just in the basement kind of putting batteries and stuff and tapes in the cameras. And of course, that's when, we hear the footsteps above us.
But again, you had somebody there to kind of like hear it and experience it. So you're like, yep, see, just more of the reason why I knew I was hearing something. At the time. Yeah.
And that's always great. I love when that happens.
Yeah. Did it start off as kind of spooky and then throughout the years you were just like, this is just normal now I just hear stuff?
Yeah. When it first started happening, it was just kind of creepy and it startling, because there would just be times where and it would be late at night. It would be like 2 a.m. and I'd be on my computer playing a game or something. And I'd hear voices in the guest room and I would be like, oh, my brother and his friend are here. And I'd, cause it would just be like 2 male voice and you just hear the, you couldn't really hear words, but it was clearly 2 guys talking. And then I'd go out there and the lights would be out in the hallway and I'd go into the guest room and it was dark and no sign of them. And there'd be like, they would have to pass me in the hallway to get out of the building. So it was just like, no, I heard voices. Or I heard like something bang, almost like they would hit the wall that my computer was like, the desk was up against, and you could hear something hitting the wall and moving. And it was a common sound for me because they would come in with their backpacks or whatever, and trying to get into the bed, they'd rub up against the wall. And I would hear these things, and every now and then they wouldn't be there. And I'm like, that's weird. Like, why am I hearing movement and voices and there's nobody there? And I wasn't even thinking ghost. I'm just like, oh, my brother's here. I'll go say hi. And then it's like, oh, he's not here. I'm going to bed now.
Now, when you did your investigation there, was that the first that you did with the group, or had you been with that group for a while beforehand?
I'd been with them for a while, so we had done a number of like residences in the area and some local businesses and things like that. And like I said, I really wanted to get in there, but I had to time it so when my grandparents weren't there.
Yeah.
And they would only go away every couple of months. So it was kind of like having them out of the house, but then I'd have to, coordinate with everyone else in the group and, are you free this weekend? Are you free this weekend? Yeah, let's do this. So no, it wasn't the first place we did, but we did get to do it, which was nice.
Okay, sweet. And how was when you go about an investigation, what are the things that you start with? I know like some people will set up K2 meters and REM pods, things like that. How is your approach when going into an investigation?
We, the first group we were in, it was very complicated. You know, we had the DVR, we had the wired cameras, you know, the infrared and audio recorders and camcorders, and it was almost too cumbersome because there were 4 of us in the group, and then, you know, you investigate for 8 hours and people are like, oh, that's 8 hours of evidence. And it's like, no, it's 8 hours times however many cameras and audio recorders and camcorders. And so 8 hours turns into like, now you have like 180 hours of evidence to go through. And it was too much. It was just too much.
Yeah.
So when the first group sort of dissolved and we started the second group, which is the New York Paranormal Society, we're not really too active anymore. And I can get into that if you like. We basically kept it much more simple. We started doing initial investigations with like no equipment. We would just go and interview the person and get a feel for the place and try to like assess, like, is there something really going on here? Or is this somebody who's watched too many ghost hunting shows and is attributing things? But yeah, we would always use EMF detectors. The K2 meters we didn't like too much. That we found them to be very sensitive. Especially in this day and age of like cell phones and things like that. It was just always going off. And we'd set up a few cameras, a few audio devices, and we'd really just try to target, you know, the rooms where activity was supposed to take place. Whereas in the old days, when the first group, we would cover like the entire house. And like I said, it was just so much work. We would spend 2 or 3 hours just setting up and breaking down.
It's a lot of work.
We did go for like a simpler approach.
Yeah. The first time I did when I did an actual group investigation with, I mean, when I say group, I mean like a total of 4 people. I had somebody with a regular camera, somebody with a night vision camera, somebody with the iPhone camera. And I'm like, at the end of it, I was like, this is going to be a lot to go through. Also, when we hit record on one of the cameras, they did it in a different format. So now it has to be converted into a different format and things like that. So now when I go through, I'm like, really? I can just use the phone now, like to record.
Yeah.
And you put it, you know, like I don't need a bunch of different things going off. You have the little things like EMF. I feel the same way about the K2 meter. Unless it's sitting by itself and nobody's really near it, that's the only time that I feel like it could be something, but I use just regular EMF. But yeah, I think a simpler approach is sometimes what works the best.
Yeah, and that's what we found. So we kept like paring back our equipment because it was too much. It was getting to be too much. And when we kind of rebooted the group, we just said, we're not doing all this crazy stuff. We'll take a few cameras, a few audio recorders, set up where the activity is supposed to take place, and just gamble on that. Because I can't put 3 cameras in the attic and 4 cameras in the living room, and, you know, to cover because, you know, sometimes they try to cover every single angle, and I appreciate that, but how realistic is it? You know, you get one night in a location, and, you know, if you spend all your time setting up, that leaves very little time to actually investigate. So
yeah, and plus what a lot of people don't see is a lot of the investigation is kind of sitting around and waiting for things to happen.
Oh yeah, because all my friends, you know, they're, oh, that's so cool. You go ghost hunting. I want to come with you. And it's like, no, you don't. Like, it's 8 hours of sitting still, being quiet. And in the summer, the AC is off, and in the winter, the heat is off. And, you know, a lot of these more commercial places, if it's a bar or a business or a restaurant, they can be dusty, they can be dirty, they can be run down. You know, some of the places we went to, it's just you're in a dingy basement, and it's, you know, 10 degrees down there and you're shivering, and or you're up in some attic in the summer and it's 90 degrees and at 2 a.m. So it's not what people see on TV. And I always try to remind people, like, that's, you know, you have an 8-hour investigation edited down to like 22 minutes, if that, you know, and most of that is staged anyway. So it's really not what you see on TV. Go do it for real, and then you might not be so enthusiastic about it.
I mean, it's always exciting when something does happen.
Oh yeah.
So then you're like, finally, after 6 hours, finally something happened, and then it'll go away like that, and you'll wait another couple of hours. Unless it's like highly active. Have you guys had that happen to where, I know there's like some places that you'll go into and you're like, I don't know, the person kind of seems like they've, like you said, watched too many ghost shows or something like that. So you went in kind of with low expectations and then were surprised by what was captured?
A few times. You know, most places, nothing happened. And easy to debunk. There was one family we investigated, and we found that they were using old alarm clocks, and the old alarm clocks give off tons of EMF. Like, we'd go over to it and it would like just go off off the charts. And we'd say, look, EMF can kind of mess with your brain. You can hallucinate. You'll see things. You'll hear things. And this is like right by your head as you're, inches from your head as you're sleeping. Buy new alarm clocks because they have much lower EMF. And then they would do that. And then a few weeks later, we'd follow up with them. They're like, yeah, we haven't seen or heard anything since. I was like, there you go. There's no ghost. It's just, wacky alarm clock. And we had that a lot. And so we always would try to go in and try to debunk. And we try to let, not that we don't believe people, but you want to try to find explanations for things. To put them at ease too, because if they're saying, oh my God, there's something going on here, well, maybe there's not, The only place I would say that we had, well, a few places, I'm on Staten Island, New York, and okay. So the two places I would mention are Sailors Snug Harbor and the Church of St. Andrew. Those were two places where we had experiences and actually captured stuff. Because like you said, a lot of times you're sitting there for 8 hours and nothing happens. You don't get a footstep, you don't get a knock, you don't get anything. And then you just go home and now, like I said, it's 180 hours of footage and audio you got to watch where, again, nothing happens. But those two places we would actually catch EVPs or footsteps. I know Snug Harbor, we were, it was funny, we were there like all night, nothing was happening. And we were in this building on the second floor and nothing was happening. And we're like, all right, like if you're not going to do anything, we're going home. And like, as soon as we were all like talking to each other, like, all right, let's wrap this up. Like all of a sudden you hear somebody coming up the stairs and it's on video. You hear it clearly. And we're like, we're locked in here. And the door downstairs, this is an old building. Like if you open that door, the building shakes and you hear it and there was nobody there. Was that paranormal? I don't know, but it was a cool catch and it surprised us. And like I said, we're kind of on the skeptical side. Not that we don't believe these things, but we need to be convinced every time something happens. And we were sort of convinced that time because it was like, there's nobody in here except us, and we're all sitting here. We're all on camera, but yet here's these footsteps coming up the stairs, and the wood is creaking, and really weird.
Yeah, it's always funny when that happens. When you're saying, "All right, if you're not going to do anything, we're just going to leave," and then something, sometimes when you do that, something happens. They're like, "No, wait, don't leave yet."
Yeah, and it's funny because over the years, that's how our approach changed. Like instead of going in there and setting up the EMF detector and asking questions and give us a sign of your presence or knock on the wall if you're here. We stopped doing that. We'd set up the recorders and we just hang out because that was when things would happen. Like we could sit there for an hour asking EVP questions and then we'd get bored and we'd start talking to each other and, oh, what are you doing next weekend? And that's when things would happen. It was almost like when we stopped paying attention to the ghost hunting, that's when weird stuff would happen. And we were like, oh, of course now, now we get a knock on the door that, or now we're hearing footsteps that we're not really paying attention. But everybody would then stop and be like, oh, did you guys hear that? So it's almost like being natural. We had more success with that than doing the actual ghost hunting.
Yeah, it's almost the same as if anybody's like, just don't tell me what to do. You guys can be here. Just stop telling me to give you a sign. Stop telling me to talk to you. Like you're driving me crazy with that.
Yeah, and I say the same thing about like Bigfoot hunting. Like all these people go into the woods and they're banging on trees and they're doing their howls and stuff. And I'm like, you're not going to find Bigfoot that way. Everybody who sees Bigfoot, everybody who encounters Bigfoot or thinks they have, they were hiking, they were camping, they were not looking for Bigfoot. So when people ask me like, how do you go Bigfoot hunting? I'm just like, I just go camping and I don't think about it. I'm not out there howling. I'm not banging on trees to do tree knocks. I'm just letting myself have a good time and letting whatever happens happen. And I think that's where you're going to get the most success. I think if you're banging on trees, you're going to scare these things away. And same thing with ghost hunting. I think if you're just like you said, if you're demanding, like, give us a sign and knock on the wall and nah.
Yeah. Now, how many investigations did you do with this group that you said in New York before? Because you said that one, you don't really do very much anymore, right? With that group? Yeah,
we used to do a lot. And I can't even give you a figure. It was just, there were so many. A lot of residences. So a lot of times we wouldn't even list it on our website. We wouldn't talk about it because the homeowners would like, we don't want people knowing that you're here, We did some businesses and, like I said, some more commercial public places. We really pulled back just because it really started to get too commercial, I guess, if you want to use that word. Just the well-known places started charging and saying, oh, yeah, you can come in here. It's going to cost you $800 for, 8 hours. And we're like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Like, we're giving you this service and we have to pay, we have to pay for gas. We have to pay for batteries. We have to pay for new tape, again, before the digital stuff.
Yeah.
We would spend easily $200 on an investigation, and then they'd want us to pay them. And then a lot of what was happening was we'd go into a place and we'd tell them, like, okay, we'll investigate, but we need minimal people here. There's only 4 people in our group. So we had a very small group. I know some groups there's like 12, 15 people, and we're just like, that's too big. Like, we wanted to keep it small
crazy.
because now you don't know if it's just someone in the next room,
Yeah.
whose stomach is growling. Is that the EVP? Or, so if you can kind of control the environment, you have a better sense of what's going on. And the last few investigations we did, we told them this. We said, you can have one person here, but we would like the rest of the family gone, and we want the rest of the employees gone. And the last few investigations we did, it was just, we'd get there and there's like 8 people in the basement and they're drinking and they're listening to the radio. And we're like, we can't do this. Like, how are we supposed to catch EVPs if you got Van Halen blasting in the basement and you're all drinking and drunk? And we did another place in Manhattan. I won't mention the name, but we investigated there and told them the same thing. And they assured us, no, only one employee will be here to kind of help you guys navigate. Okay, great. And by like the 3rd hour of the investigation, there was like 6 other people there, and they're walking around and they're asking us questions. And, oh, I just got to get into my office. And, oh, I just got to get on my computer and check my email. And it was just, it ruined the whole investigation because then all of our audio was compromised. Like, there was just all sorts of other stuff on it. And we told them afterwards, I was like, you're not getting any evidence. Oh, why? I said, because we told you no one was allowed there. And you invited like 6 or 7 employees to show up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're sorry about that. They were just excited. I said, well, I have nothing to give you. I have no evidence to provide to you because it was all contaminated.
Yeah.
So we really started pulling back. And then it's just, which member has kids or which member moved or which member, and then my wife was in the group and then we split up. So it makes it a little awkward. I mean, we get along fine. She's great. But it's just, in our 30s, it was a little different. But now that we're, all of us are kind of pushing late 40s, early 50s, it's tougher. So.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. The first time I took a few people out, because my fiance does them with me. The first ones we did here out in Colorado was just me and her. And then it ended up being her sister and her sister's boyfriend, because he was a photographer and knew how to run a camera and all these things. He knew how to get good shots of anything. So we would bring them along. But now they live an hour away. So for us to drive to any other location, it'd be like an extra hour of driving plus whatever. And most places that we go to here and around Denver are an hour plus of driving away. So it's just a lot that goes on. So now when I look for things, I'm just like, just let it be closer, maybe just a little bit closer. But how many? I mean,
yeah,
so
you learn to. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say you went all over New York. I wish I would have ran into you when we were out there. We were out in Queens before we came out here.
Oh, okay.
And my fiance has had many of the places that she lived in New York haunted. So whenever you're telling me these things about, like, you did a lot of them, I was like, oh yeah, I know. Like, New York has a lot more, is a lot older, has a lot more history to it. So you're definitely prime for that kind of stuff to happen.
Yeah, and it's great, but a lot of the places we want to get into, they won't let us in. We have here on Staten Island, we have it's called the Conference House, and it was built, I think it was completed in like 1635. And they call it the Conference House because it's where Ben Franklin, John Adams, Rutledge, they met with the British there to avert the Revolutionary War.
Oh, wow.
And the house is still standing. And I remember I took my son there one time, and I was trying to explain to him that this house was close to 150 years old when Ben Franklin was here. Like, it's an old house.
Yeah.
And British troops were stationed there. You know, the British fleet was like right out in the harbor, like really historic. And allegedly it's haunted as hell. That's what they say. And I've
Yeah.
spoken to people who work there, and they've kind of shared some of their stories over the years, but they will not let us in to investigate.
Well, I mean, what is their? Do they give their reason on why? Is it just because it's old and historic?
From what I've heard, it's just because it's a landmark. Technically it's a museum, and I guess the board who runs it, they're just not very keen on it being a haunted house. They want it known for the history. They want it known as a museum. They want it to be known for, and rightly so. I agree with that, and especially in this day and age with the ghost hunting shows. Because a few of the places that we investigated, like 3 months later, Ghost Hunters is there. You know, Taps is there, and it's on TV. And it's like, I wonder how they found out about that, because we were on TV for doing this place. And these are like obscure, you know, it's not like the Stanley Hotel or, you know, the Winchester Mystery House, like these really well-known places. And I think they just didn't want that attention brought on it, even though you can find it in books and online. There are mentions of it. But I think the board just doesn't want it known and associated with this, because then they're going to get tons of people showing up on the grounds at night. A lot of people trespass, you know. I mean, for every good ghost hunting group out there who does things the right way, there's 10 or more who they'll trespass, they'll bring pizza and beer, and
Trash the
just
place.
gives everybody a bad name.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they won't let us in. But like I said, I've been there multiple times. I've talked to the staff who work there or volunteer there, and I've gotten some cool stories from them. And I tend to believe something's going on there, just because these are people who, they're just tour guides. And then at the end, it's like, hey, like, anything weird ever happen here? And it's like, yeah, I'll tell you once the tour's over. You know, and then privately they'll tell me. And I don't think they're pulling my leg, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because they're not getting anything to gain out of just telling you this story.
No. And they're just, some have volunteered it. Some have just like made like an offhanded comment. And then later on, after the tour, I'll go back to them and be like, hey, when you said that, did you mean like this place might be haunted? And they were like, yeah, why? Do you believe that? And you kind of have to feel each other out. But like once I tell them like, oh, I was a paranormal blogger or I'm an investigator, then they like, yeah, let me tell you this story. And the stories are never sensational. So I tend to believe them, because they're not saying, oh yeah, I walked in and there was this ghost wearing a red coat and he yelled at me. It's just like, oh yeah, I came in and I had all the chairs pushed in under the table, and then I came back like 10 minutes later and all the chairs were pulled out and I was the only one here. So nothing crazy or anything, but people would share stories. And but that's like my holy grail of the local stuff that I'd like to do. That's
awesome that you connect with all the local stuff here. I mean, I've done a few out here, but I would like to do that. And it's also, in your case, it's a sign of a good investigator that you're like, okay, I can't actually go there and, you know, be inside overnight or whatever and investigate this place, but I can talk to the people and I can get a feeling of what's going on around here without having to experience it myself or investigate it.
Yeah, and honestly, in more recent years, that's just been more of an interest to me anyway, because like, do I want to go to a place, pay $800 to spend one night there, and there's no guarantee that anything will happen, you know? So then it's like, I'm out $800 for the rental. I'm out another $200 for batteries and gas and food and whatever else we're spending. And a Saturday night, you know, I'm out all of this, or I can talk to somebody who works there and they can give me some cool stories. And I'd rather hear the stories. That to me is just more valuable at this point than, because I've had my own experiences. So I have my own beliefs, and I've made up my mind because I've seen or experienced things. And, you know, I love hearing other people's stories. And that's kind of what brought me to my own podcast. It was just like, I want to hear people's personal stories. I don't need to experience it myself anymore. So I do miss the investigating sometimes, but I miss the way it used to be. I don't want to be charged money to do it. I don't want an audience when I do it. You know, I would like to go in and do like a real thorough scientific investigation and not be charged for it, or not have people there messing it up. And I understand they're interested and I appreciate that, but it's kind of tough to have both.
Yeah. Thankfully, my first one out here, the guy, it's just a really cool like comic book and oddity shop in Denver. I like to go there, either get my comics or get the oddities. And I remember once I started the show, I was like, hey, do you mind if I like just promote your place on my show? Like just do a little shout out for you. And he was like, yeah, what's the show? And I was like, because sometimes when you say what you talk about and things like that, you always are like, I don't want to come off as like weird or something. And I was like, I talk to people who have paranormal experiences, da da da. And his response was, you believe in ghosts? And I was like, yeah. And then it switched to, this place is haunted. Do you want to investigate this place? And I was, yeah, of course. Like, so that really led me into my investigations out here, is from that, which was a good experience. Just that moment of, as you say, talking to people is the best thing, because sometimes it'll yield the best results in that aspect.
Yeah, man, you got just embrace the weird, because and like in my family, I'm the weirdo. I'm the weirdo who goes ghost hunting and believes in Bigfoot and believes in UFOs. And so do I get laughed at? Yeah, but I also get people coming up to me and sharing their stories, because they know I'm not going to judge them. They know I'm going to listen to them and maybe be able to advise them or tell them what they saw, or, hey, Jay, I saw this, and what do you think that was? And I've had family members like disclose things, like people I never thought would disclose things to me, and friends and coworkers. Like, once they find out like what I'm into, then it's like I get pulled aside and like, hey, Jay, let me tell you this.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you that. Oh, okay. So yeah, embrace it, dude. Like, and because like once they know, people will tell you all sorts of things. People you never thought would tell you things.
That's what my fiance says. She's like, make cards now, because you said one of your big things is Bigfoot, and here in Colorado, tons of people who love Bigfoot. We have a whole Sasquatch Outlook museum here, and so I see a lot of people with the stickers on, and I would always say, man, I just want to ask them, like, do you actually, because the sticker says, I believe, with Bigfoot there. Mm-hmm. Do you actually believe? Why do you believe? Have you had any experiences? Like, those are the things I want to dive into.
Oh, yeah, and that's always great, because I think anybody with Bigfoot stickers on their car or UFO paraphernalia or like anything like that, like, if you have that, you clearly have to believe. They're probably not a hardcore skeptic who's going to laugh at you if they have a Bigfoot sticker on their car.
Yeah.
Like, there's probably some level of belief or open-mindedness at least there.
Yeah. So that's why she's like, make cards. Just ask them. What does it matter? Just ask them. It won't hurt.
Yeah.
But since now I brought up Bigfoot, and you say that's one of your the big topics that you really like when it comes to the whole paranormal spectrum here. What is the reason why? Why is there this draw to the big hairy guy?
I'm not really sure. Like I said, when I was younger, I was interested in the whole spectrum. Loch Ness Monster, ghosts, spontaneous human combustion, anything paranormal, cryptozoological, supernatural, unexplained. I was into Jack the Ripper, like any sort of unsolved mystery I was really into. As I got a little older, Bigfoot really became the thing. Just, I think because out of all those things, it's probably the most likely to exist and probably the most easy path to discovery. If this is just an undiscovered North American primate, it eats, it sleeps, it could be captured, it could be filmed, a UFO, if you believe UFOs are alien spacecraft, what are the chances we're going to catch one? What are the chances? Like, their technology's got to be so far beyond us. And then you have to be outside, you have to be looking in the sky, and it's much tougher to investigate that. And same with ghosts. I think if you're a paranormal investigator, like I said, you could rent a place for a night and nothing could happen. And then the very next night, someone's going to have all sorts of activity. And even if you do capture something, what is the proof and what does it prove? You've captured footsteps. Well, is that the soul of a deceased person, or is that just an echo from the past, or is it just the house settling? Like, we still don't know what it is. Like, you've captured these footsteps on audio or video or whatever, but what is it? If you capture Bigfoot, now you can dissect it, you can put it in a cage, you can study it, you can do DNA testing on hairs, it's just, I think it's more within our reach if it exists than the other things. And I'm still into the other things, and I think just because I'm in New York City, I was, originally from Brooklyn. I live on Staten Island now. Not a lot of Bigfoot sightings out here. So it's very tough to hunt Bigfoot on Staten Island, even though there was a sighting back in the 70s, which I don't believe was actually Bigfoot, but interesting nonetheless. So yeah, I got into like the ghost hunting because that's much easier. There's plenty of places to hunt ghosts, and UFO spotting in the city. You're lucky you can see more than 3 or 4 stars at night here. So
yeah, with the light pollution,
yeah. So I think for all those reasons, it's just Bigfoot is much more of an interest to me now than the other topics.
And when you say, because you said earlier, you mentioned when you go out camping, you just kind of go to relax. Have you had anything happen when you're out there in the woods, or is it just like, if anything does happen, that would be icing on the cake?
Yeah, I mean, I met my friend Josh a few years ago, 2018, and we've gone camping multiple times up in the Adirondacks, and it's been great. For most of those trips, nothing happened. We had one trip that we went on, and I'm not even saying this is Bigfoot because we don't know.
Yeah.
But it was really weird. We had this one trip. It was like, at the time, it was like the longest hike we had done. It was the toughest hike we had done. It was the deepest we had ever gone. It was in the Hudson River Gorge wilderness. The first night we got up there, we were zonked. Like, it was just a rough hike. We brought way too much gear. It was all uphill, and it was like 3 miles in August. So we had dinner, we went to bed, and it had rained, and then it was really windy. We were just kind of hanging out in the tent, and we hear female voices like approaching the camp. And I was like, oh, I think someone's coming. And we're like looking for flashlights. We never see anything. Nothing happened. So we just kind of chalked it up to like, okay, weird. The next night, because we always do 2 nights. Well, most of the time we do 2 nights. So the second night, much nicer. We fished all day. We kind of hung out down by the lake. And we were there was nobody around us. We were in deep. This was like really remote, primitive camping. And so that night, like, we cooked dinner, we get the fire going. The sun had just gone down, and his dog starts looking off into the woods, and is like kind of standing at attention, big German Shepherd. And then we hear something walking in, and it's big. Like, you can tell this is not a deer, this is not a squirrel. This is like branches are moving, and you could hear the footsteps, and it gets right in front of us, and there's eye shine. And we both stand up, we grab our sticks. We're thinking this is a bear. Yeah. And this is the only trip we've ever been on where we didn't take a weapon. And we're like, of course.
Yeah.
And this thing's looking at us, and my buddy Josh is like, I think it's a bear standing up, because it's eye level with us, and we're both like 6'1", and a black bear standing up is generally 5 feet, 6 feet tall, and it's behind a tree, and it's kind of like peeking out at us, and we're yelling at it because we think it's a bear. We're yelling at it, screaming, and usually in the Adirondacks, bears just run off. They're like dogs. They just get scared. They don't like people. They don't go near people. But this thing's just standing there looking at us, and I'm like, Josh, that tree is down in the ravine. Like, if this thing is standing behind the tree, it's not 6 feet tall. It's at least 8 feet tall. Wow. And we did like a whole video on it. Like, the next day we like showed the tree where it was at. We looked for prints. We didn't find any. But you can clearly see like the campsite was elevated, and then there was like this little ravine, and the tree was down here. So if this thing was like behind the tree, and I like kind of did this, and Josh was like, yeah, where your fingertips are, or like where the eyes were. So I was like, all right, that's 8 feet easily. We didn't see anything. Like, we were shining our lights. All we could see was the eye shine, but we didn't see it. So we don't say it was Bigfoot, but it hung around for like 6 or 7 minutes, just staring at us. And then it slowly kept walking, and it sounded bipedal to me. It was just step, 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 step. And it was not trying to be discreet. It was making a lot of noise. And that night we were like, look, if there's a bear here, let's leave the cooler out. Like, usually we do a bear hang. We said, well, let's drag the cooler really far from the tents and leave the food in there. And we had sausages, we had cheese, like really smelly stuff. And we were like, the bear can have the food. We're leaving in the morning. Let the bear have the food. It's less for us to carry out. Yeah. And the next morning, the cooler was untouched. So we just thought that was odd too, because the bears up there, they know what coolers look like. Yeah. Yeah. So again, I can't say definitively, but it was a really weird, frightening moment, because if this is a bear, we're going to have to defend ourselves because it's not leaving. And if it's Bigfoot, like, our car is 3 miles away over a mountain, and then we're still like 20 miles from the nearest town. So like, if we get hurt, we're in trouble. Yeah.
What stopped you guys from, I guess it would, never mind. I would know the answer to that question because you didn't know what type of creature it was. I was going to say, what stopped you guys from like walking towards whatever it was? But yeah, if it's an unknown creature, I mean, you're not going to put yourself at risk, especially when, like you said, this is the one time you didn't bring protection with you, and all you had was the stick.
Yeah, usually we have a shotgun with us just because, again, you just never know when a bear is going to get too aggressive or whatever. And we didn't bring them because they're heavy. And we said we got the dog with us, and, we had knives. So we had knives and we had sticks that we were using to prop up the tarp. So we're just like standing there with a stick and a knife.
Yeah.
And we're hoping this thing doesn't charge us. We're hoping that the dog doesn't run, because that's what my buddy was afraid of. His dog might run after this thing. And the dog just sat there and stared at it.
Okay, I was just wondering what the dog's reaction was to it.
Yeah, the dog, he didn't bark. He just didn't move. He just kind of was sitting up, looking at this thing. And we all were, like the three of us are just there. We're making noise. We're banging the sticks. And like I said, up here, like the bears, they run off. They're skittish. They're not aggressive. They're not, that's not bear behavior here. Usually a bear, if they hear you, they run. And this thing, like I said, it was probably 6 or 7 minutes. It just sat there and stared at us, no matter how much we yelled.
Super curious of you guys, I guess, in that moment.
Yeah. So I don't know what it was. We'll never know what it was. And we were just like, it was either a bear. We thought maybe a mountain lion or, cougar or whatever, but we didn't hear anything climbing a tree. And it was just up too high. It would have had to climb a tree.
Yeah. Plus you said it sounded
moose,
bipedal.
but
right?
To me it did, yeah. I thought it was a person coming in at first. I thought, because that's kind of where the trail leads out if we were going to head back to the car. So when I first heard it, I thought maybe it was campers coming through, but I didn't see a flashlight, and it was dark at this point. It had just gotten dark. It was probably like 8:15 or so at night. It had just gotten dark, and I was like, there's no way somebody could come in without a flashlight. The terrain was too rugged. Even the trail itself was it was a rough trail, rocky and lots of roots, and not a very easy trail. So to navigate it without a flashlight, impossible. But I thought it was a person walking up on us at first.
Yeah. Well, I think I was just talking about it the other day. There is a distinction when you hear something walking on two legs versus something walking on fours. You can definitely tell. Like I don't think there's any mistaking. To me, I wouldn't be able to mistake something walking on two legs versus walking on all four. Yeah.
Because I did, and it sounded like it was on 2 feet to me anyway.
Would you want a more up close and personal kind of experience with one to know for a fact that this is what you're looking at?
Maybe not that close. This thing was maybe 40 feet from us, 30, 40 feet from us, if that. I would say closer to 30 feet away from us.
Wow.
It was not that far. It was, and again, for most of the experience, I was thinking it was a bear. And it's not moving away, and we may have to fight this thing, especially if the dog runs after it, because then they're going to get into a scuffle, and then, but the longer I thought about it, and the more I realized, like, that tree is in a ravine. If it's behind that tree, it's much bigger than 6 feet tall, because that tree, the bottom of the tree where it would be standing was at least 2 or 3 feet lower than where we were standing. So you're talking about a tall animal.
Whatever it was big.
Whatever it was. Yeah. I do think I would like to see one day, but maybe not that close. Maybe on the other side of a lake, through binoculars. But I don't need a 9 foot tall monkey man.
Yeah.
That close to me. It's scary. Something that could rip me in half.
Yeah, I had one guy, and he was like, "Yeah, I would want to walk up and shake one's hand," and I was like, "I don't know if I would want that."
Nah, I think a lot of people impose personalities onto these things, and they're friendly forest giants, or they're people too, and they have. I don't know. I really don't know. And for me, it's almost like if they're primates, they can be any number of things. We're primates, and you have people who are the nicest, most gentle people in the world, and you have sociopaths and everything in between. And I don't want to run into a 9 foot tall sociopath.
Yeah, because a regular ape can do damage to you no matter what. Now, Now think of it as an 8 foot tall creature that has some semblance of intelligence to the point where they, there are a bunch of different experiences that people have where it's just like they're doing this and it seemed kind of human and this. So it's like that makes me more uneasy with being in very close proximity with something that is that strong and that is somewhat human and that has that type of intelligence. Because like you said, when it comes to humans, there's the nicest people, and then there's complete psychopaths. So
and if a 4 foot tall chimpanzee can tear a person apart, what can a 9 foot tall primate do? So I'm not saying they're violent by nature. I don't know, but I think a lot of people will, sort of give them a personality. And some people will tell you, oh, these are bloodthirsty monsters, they'll eat you. And then other people, they're just kind of like, oh no, they're the gentle forest giants and they just want to be left alone. And if you get hurt, they'll help you out of the forest. I've heard the whole spectrum of stories where these things are gentle, or they're throwing rocks at you, or they're, screaming at you. So I don't know. So yeah, I don't know if I'd want to meet one up close. Like I said, from a long distance through binoculars or through my camera lens. Look, there's a Bigfoot. Great, now I know they exist. But that was way too close for comfort.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. It sounds like it, especially with the fact that all you had was the dog and sticks in that moment. Because if anything were to happen, imagine if it did step out and it was a Bigfoot. Would you I think in my mind I'd be like, I either run or I'm gonna die here, because there's no way I'm fighting off this thing.
Yeah, something 8 or 9 foot tall. I don't care how big the stick is. I don't care how big your knife is. It's like fighting a grizzly bear, and we don't have them here, luckily. I mean, we have black bear, and they're generally small. I mean, 200 to 400 pounds. Like I said, standing up, maybe 6 feet tall on the bigger end. Yeah. They're not huge bears, but they're strong, and if you get into a tussle with one, you're gonna take some damage. So to deal with something the size of a grizzly bear, I would not want to go head to head with a grizzly bear. I would not want to go head to head with a Bigfoot. So if that thing stepped out, I'm dropping my weapons and I'm like, peace, dude, peace. Like, we're cool. Leave us alone. We're just camping.
Yeah, no, I think it would be the same way. I want to have an experience to where, especially being out in Colorado. There's a mountain that we have, Pikes Peak, probably about an hour away, and they actually have a Bigfoot crossing sign when you get to the top of the mountain. There's a sign that's put there so that it lets people know that people have experienced sightings of this creature. But what would be, before we get into you letting know where people can find you and things, what would be a paranormal experience that you would really want to happen for you? Something that will solidify a certain belief for you, or whether it be, again, like Bigfoot, maybe UFO wise, what's something that you would like to really experience?
I think a definitive Bigfoot experience. I've had enough paranormal stuff happen to me that I know there's something going on. I don't know if it's ghosts. I don't know if it's the spirits of the dead. I don't know if it's echoes from the past. I don't know if it's just weird earth stuff. But I've had enough of it happen to me, and I've had enough other people validate it for me, like we said earlier in the show, that they've seen the same things I've seen in my apartment. UFOs, I've seen enough things in the sky to be like, that was weird. So I don't know if I need to see a UFO again, but the Bigfoot thing, I think that's really my holy grail. Again, I don't want to see one up close, but if I can get some sort of evidence of it, that would be like my holy grail.
Yeah. I think mine would be the UFO thing, because I too have had my sightings of UFOs. I've had one fly towards my car to the point where I had to swerve. But I would like to see what is controlling these things. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Like I said, I've seen some weird stuff.
Yeah, I mean, lights in the sky are weird themselves, especially when you can tell that they're not a plane or a helicopter.
Yeah, definitely.
But if you want to let everybody know where they can find you, where they can look you up, where they can get in contact with you, things like that.
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, Facebook. Just look up Odd and Untold, and I should pop up. But yeah, I focus mostly on the YouTube stuff, but I have audio versions of the podcast, like I said, on Apple and Spotify and a few other places, and iHeartRadio. And yeah, I have a Facebook page. I have Instagram. I have Twitter. I don't really use the Twitter much. I just don't like Twitter, or X, whatever they're calling it now. Yeah. It's too much social media. Like I said, I'm just getting too old for all of this stuff. Like I said, I really just focus on the YouTube. But yeah, Odd and Untold.
Okay, sweet. And I'll make sure that I put a link, whether it is a LinkTree, a website, all the links down below so everybody can find you.
Awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate you coming on, sharing experiences, sharing what got you into this world. Like I said, it's always nice talking to somebody who does not the same exact work, but is in the world, much like myself.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, of course. Anytime, my friend, you can come on. For anybody watching, listening, whatever you're doing. Don't forget to ask questions and face your fears. Thanks for joining me and Jason on this episode of Induced Fear. Bye, everybody.